Welcome, Tip the Walls, Talking Buffalo live from London. One of the guests here, Charlie. Don, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm glad we didn't know we were going to be on at 10:30. Didn't know Charlie could come on until like 11. So we were going to have to explain. The caption says live from London. We're not live from London. We're in our corporate studios here,
Yes.
but Charlie is definitely live from London. So we are no false advertising here. How you doing, Charlie?
I'm great, thank you. Good to speak to you guys.
Absolutely. Charlie and I met, lucky enough, on Sunday for the Bills-Miami game. It was the second of Charlie's triple header that I definitely want to talk about. 3 weeks, 3 different stadiums, and 2 different countries. An amazing, Bills journey going forward. First of all, Charlie, just kind of set the scene for us. What's it like in London right now? Have you noticed any Bills Mafia there yet? And what's the rest of your day look like?
Yeah, so lots of Bills Mafia already in town. Pubs starting to fill up. I landed
No
at
way.
Heathrow. Yeah, I know, right? Because British don't like drinking, you see. But lots of Bills fans in London, and it's only going to increase from this point forward. So I know I was in Heathrow on Tuesday morning. Just trying to remember the day, and yeah, there was already people starting to come into town. It's great.
So what does are there a lot of Jags fans there? Is there any noticeable presence, or is it if you walked around, would you just only see Bills colors?
Yeah, typically you only see Bills colors right now. You'll start to see Jags jerseys probably on Saturday. I mean, I don't know how many Jags fans really come over from the US, to be honest. I mean, it's not a massive fan base anyway. It's not a fan base that typically travels well from what I've seen. But obviously, there are plenty that live here that have become Jags fans over the years because they've been coming so regularly. But they're not going to be wandering around in their Jags jerseys on the Saturday. For them, seeing the Jags is relatively normal. But I'm pretty sure it's going to be mostly Bills fans that you see wandering around.
Yeah, it's interesting because they played there last weekend also. So, what would a fan would go to one game or the other, I presume. Not many would stay for a whole week, but
Exactly.
a little bit of a turnover, sure.
And they're
And
there
so-
every year, so it's not really
Yeah.
special. All right, so take us through the rest of today for you. You mentioned that you're heading on over to the bar after this. Kind of talk to us about the bar. You mentioned it on your show the last time, but for fans here that have watched Welcome to Wrexham, I imagine it as like the pub that's attached to the stadium in Wrexham where everybody hangs out. Just maybe take us like what's the scene like there on a regular Bills Sunday, and then what's going to look like tonight, and then for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah, sure. So I've actually taken a few people to the pub before, and they've always been surprised by how nice it is. It's a very nice pub. It's really well done out, somewhat in a sort of traditional English style with sort of some wood paneling and things. It's a sports pub, right? So it's got screens everywhere. I don't know, it's probably like 12 screens scattered around the pub. There's like a traditional front and back of the pub. Okay, so you walk in and there's like a little alleyway and you get down to the back, and we usually book out the whole thing for a normal game day, which will be about 120 people, something of that order. So it's not a huge pub, but for the purposes of for us, it's great. So you got screens everywhere, super friendly staff. It is the official London Bills backers pub, so we have Bills flags up all over the place, and we sing the shout song. And it's a really good mix of Western New Yorkers, expats, and also locals who have been Bills fans like me for maybe 20, 30 years. So it's a really friendly group. And yeah, we love going.
So they have a maximum capacity. So it's not
Correct.
like, yeah, they're not going to have an opportunity lost, or if they somehow didn't anticipate how, we've heard this before. We've talked to one in Miami. I've talked to some establishments in other NFL cities that admitted they just didn't anticipate, didn't know that there would be so many. So if there's a maximum, it is what it is.
Yeah.
First come, first serve. And yeah,
Exactly. And we book seats in advance. I mean, we welcome as many people as we can, usually on a normal game day, but we always book seats in advance because sometimes people want to eat. It's tricky to eat standing up sometimes. And then we welcome as many people we can fit in otherwise. But yeah, it's around 100, 120 would have normally on a game day. And this weekend we've ticketed every session just to make sure we can control the numbers. I mean, there's a whole heap of other pubs around the city that we've already agreed that will host Bills fans. But for the official one, we've got it ticketed just so that we don't get too crazy.
There's like satellite bars this weekend where
Exactly.
if you're not in
Oh,
the
yeah.
if you're not in the inner sanctum, then you get pushed out to one of those little bars, right?
And some of them are on the same street. They're literally like a minute down the road.
That's funny. So this is something I'm curious about. What's the level of like sophistication of the people watching the game? You know, a lot of times there'll be even in Buffalo. There's places where you go to actually watch the football game, and then there are places that are more casual viewing, you know, for people. What's it like? And with you here last weekend, you know, comparing it to like being at the game, what's the vibe like during a game?
Yes, a good question. I would say it's a pretty sophisticated audience. I would say better than average if you got a group of Bills fans together. I mean, everyone there is hardcore. Everybody there has been a Bills fan for usually a pretty long time, and if they haven't, they're learning about the game, and so their knowledge is pretty high. You know, everybody would know almost every player. I think that, I mean, the NFL's been shown a long time in the UK, so your average NFL fan in the UK knows the game, right? This isn't just a casual thing. They're coming out on a Sunday. London's a big city, so you might still live in London. It'd take you an hour to get there, right? Because you got to get across the city. But people turn out time and again, and I would say it's pretty high. And so, what was your second question?
Comparing it to like
Oh
being
yeah,
at the
to
game.
like I mean, nothing compares to being at a live game, right? So as you mentioned, I was in Washington DC 2 weeks ago now. I was then in Buffalo this weekend. And I have to say, this weekend in Buffalo was the best game watching experience I've ever had. I mean, just incredible. From start to finish, we ate great food in Allentown and hung out there on the Saturday. We had a great tailgate, got to run into you, Josh, which was awesome. And then we went back to the Hammers lot. We saw the full insanity of what that was about. And then I introduced
what was your impression of that? Had you seen that before? And is it what you expected? Okay.
Yeah, I'd seen it before, but I introduced a few friends of mine who had never been to Hammers before to it. And you know, I've got a good friend of mine, Nick, who's the original UK Bills backer. He's got his truck right in the center of Hammers. He has British flags around it. And it's kind of like the focal point for us Brits when we come over. So I'd seen before, so it's pretty much expected, but it's still it's pretty wild. Right, we had people jumping through tables off the top of their cars, people doing shots with bowling balls off the tops of trucks. You know, it was the full experience. You know, mustard and ketchup show. And I have to say, the Brits that I came over with who had never seen it before were just blown away. They were like, "This is wild." There's just nothing that compares.
That's a fun thing to do, isn't it? When you've been to an experience and you know, you try to describe it to people, but there's really no way to properly describe it without experience it yourself. So when you bring someone along like that you know will appreciate it, and they do, and like you just said, they're blown away. You feel such like vindication and happiness about it. Like now you get it, and now we can talk about it in the future, and you'll know what I'm talking about, right?
Well, I'll go a step further. I mean, some of the Brits that I came over, they were saying it was the best weekend of their lives. You know, they just had such an incredible time. And then obviously the game was amazing. The stadium was insane and louder than I've ever heard before. I think McDermott said the same. So yeah, it was just insane. So I mean, that is the peak, right? That is the peak watching experience. But the next step down, I would say, after being at the live game, is absolutely being at the official London Bills backers pub in London, because it is a hardcore fan base. We sing the shout song. They don't show any soccer or rugby or anything else when the Bills are on. We just dedicated to the Bills, and the staff will kick people out. They'll say, "Hey, no, this is a Bills pub now." You know, in the mid-afternoon.
Really?
See ya. Oh yeah. If we've had people come on and say, "Hey, I want to watch the soccer," and like, "Nope, not going to happen. This is a Bills pub on Sundays." So, yeah.
Are there usually like EPL games on Sunday nights, or is that window kind of closed? Is it usually Saturdays and Sunday?
Yeah, so they do have some Sunday games, and they usually run into the kickoff time for the Bills. So they might finish at maybe 30 minutes after the Bills have started. And obviously, when we first started the pub and we didn't have so many people turning up, we'd show everything. But now it's dedicated to us. So yeah, it's quite a scene.
We have our first question here from a person that's watching us live. 916 asks, "What's the capacity of Tottenham Stadium? Do you know in England where the games?
I think it's about 65,000, something of that order. So pretty similar to what the new Bills stadium is going to be.
Is that average for like a large soccer stadium in England?
Yeah, good question. So the majority that are sort of either new are getting built around the sort of 60,000 mark. That's kind of like the benchmark. We have just in Premier League games, 19 home games a season, and then there's a whole heap of other games, cup games and Champions League games and stuff like that. So you're probably looking at 20 to 30 home games a season. The biggest stadiums would be in the region of 70,000. And the largest stadiums would be sort of 55,000 and up. So Spurs is right in that window.
Okay.
A couple things going back to what you said, Charlie. You don't have to answer this, but as I see it, if you're organizing these Bills fans to come into the establishment and they have a limited number, and it's first come first serve, and you said there was some kind of arrangement, I just feel like there's a bit of an entrepreneurial opportunity there for you, maybe a little personal seat license deal. You don't have to answer. Maybe just blink twice if you took advantage of that, which like people, they went out their parking lots on Sundays.
Right. But let's just say I've had more than my share of free beer. Let me put it that way.
There you go. That's I like that. That's the least they could do, right? So
exactly,
yeah,
right.
Going back to the Miami game too, my daughters went to the game. They usually go to one game a year, and they chose this game back in the summertime. We knew it was going to be a good game. Miami was expected to be much better, but didn't realize it was going to be, a battle of titans like that. And they've been to several games and said it was the loudest one they ever been to. It was just a tremendous time. And that's, for people that have been going from here. So.
Right. I mean, what about you, Josh? I mean, you were there. I mean, you've seen
It
many
was
more games
it
than
was
I have.
it was about as electric as it's been since. Oh man, it's hard to tell because like back in the 90s, there were 80,000 seats.
Right.
They've gotten rid of probably 12,000 seats in the stadium over the course of 35 years, and it was different back then, right? There were no suites like in the those dugout suites in the middle, and it just felt like there were people everywhere. So a 10,000 person difference does make a difference. I would say it's the loudest I've heard it since I worked there.
Oh yeah.
And so it's at least since the late 90s. I still think some of those, like the AFC Championship game against the Raiders, the comeback game, were maybe on a different level. But again, you had 10,000 more people there. This was as loud as I think it probably could be. Like, I can't imagine it being any louder.
Just to put this game in that conversation, it's pretty impressive.
And it felt like a big game. And in a lot of ways, it was a better atmosphere than that Cincinnati playoff game last year.
Oh yeah,
you were there, right?
That Cincinnati playoff game was so flat. The weather, everything about it. This felt like a playoff game. Cool. This felt like a big. I can't imagine that this game was at night last Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that it was 1:00, it was beautiful out, so it was fine. Can you imagine if people had been drinking for another 6 hours, Charlie, and then walked into that stadium? Like, it was bonkers.
But, you say that I could tell even at tailgate, people were fired up at a level that I hadn't seen before in Buffalo. I've been to obviously many tailgates, and it just felt different. And you're right, it felt. I don't know, maybe the Cincinnati game, people were nervous. It felt like people were nervous, and that transitioned. But I just wanted to make a point around one of the things you said about this. Now there's like corporate boxes and that kind of thing. I've been to the stadium where the 49ers play, which is nowhere near San Francisco for anybody that's been there.
SoFi Stadium.
It's like a wall of like corporate boxes. And I think it kills the atmosphere, absolutely kills it. And I was so happy to see this new stadium design. Like the boxes are going to be around the stadium as opposed to like one big wall like they have in Detroit or in the 49ers stadium, because it just kills it. Kills the noise.
I agree with you I loved everything about Ford Field except for that wall of boxes. We were facing that, and it's kind of a weird dynamic where you're looking. It's almost like you're looking at like a large movie screen. The stadium just kind of cuts off, and then it's just this hard wall of boxes. And the stadium is beautiful, but you're right. That's kind of a weird dynamic. We have another question here from Chris Falta. So he writes, "Are fish and chips still a thing? Do wings sell better than fish and chips on a game day? And how are the wings in England?"
Yeah, great question. So yeah, certainly fish and chips are still a big thing. A lot of people will still eat fish and chips. I'm not a seafood guy, so I don't tend to touch them. But yeah, you can get great fish and chips in London for sure. At the pub, wings are the popular food. That's what most people will be eating on a Sunday when it's game day. And the wings in the pub are actually pretty good. They've got Frank's hot sauce. They're pretty legit. I mean, they're not going to be at the same level as Duff's or Bar Bill or whatever, Gabriel's Gate, but they're hitting the spot. And if you know where to go, then you can get great wings in London. There's a place called Orange Buffalo for anyone passing through. That's recommended wing place. These are two dudes, I think, that sort of spent some time in Western New York and came back and said they wanted to set something up as close as they could. So yeah, look up Orange Buffalo. There's a few of them around the city if you want really good wings.
Yeah, no, it's funny as we're sitting here, Charlie, at our setup. We're at a big table. I'm not going to move the cameras because it's hard to get the setting back. But I'm part of a group text message that keeps popping up, and I'm ignoring it. But I know what it's about. It's our neighbor across the street. Everyone here in the neighborhood is going to his backyard, a tiki bar, and he's asking people, telling them what to bring. And it's funny. I there's an article coming out today on WB and I think WGR that I wrote, and I do mention it closes actually with you and the fact that you two met at the Miami game, and Charlie, you telling Josh that all the events were sold out, but it's just such a different thing for a 9:30 start here. But the article starts off by saying essentially something like, it'll take you your second cup of coffee after you turn the TV on to notice much different on television. But coffee. That's where I think because I'm realizing, coffee's going to be maybe a quickie, and then they're moving on from coffee very quickly to other things.
Coffee. Come on.
I mean,
that's as bad as your Benny Hill reference is done.
There's one in the article, only that there were previous Benny Hill references.
Hang on a second, Don. I mean, did they not just change the law so you could drink early on a Sunday?
So
you're not going to take advantage of that?
Yeah,
I mean, Kathy Hochul did.
It was really great. Pat McAfee did a whole thing on it yesterday. Kathy Hochul extended the bar license to 8 a.m. Sunday morning.
That's reading the room right
so
there.
And I remember that in 2015. That was a big thing.
Was it?
They could open, but I don't think they could serve alcohol till 11 a.m.
Huh.
So I think it was like halftime where people could start drinking during the Bills-Jags game in 2015. I know you were there, but that was the thing back then. Is I think they didn't change the law, so people could not drink. What is it in England? Can you drink? Can you walk into a pub at 8 in the morning?
Nope, you cannot. So I think usually you start drinking at 12 here. So England is a country with an affection for booze, and so we have to have some degree of boundaries.
What time do the earliest soccer games start? Is there ever morning kickoffs?
It might midday, like 12:30. That would be the soonest. And sometimes they actually pick the kind of high profile, high tension games and they put them early because they know that people won't be drinking the same. So as you know, I'm a big Man City fan. So Man United might be starting at 12:30 because they don't want people getting too boozed up before they get there. But the atmosphere is going to be way better if it's going to be an 8 p.m. kickoff when everyone's been drinking all afternoon.
That's interesting. We have another question here from 916. What's more popular in Europe and in England, European basketball or American football?
Oh, American football by a long distance. Yeah, certainly in the UK and Germany. Yeah.
Okay, and then he asks, what are the most popular? If you had to say, who are the 5 most popular jerseys that you'll see in London? Of NFL guys?
That's a great question. I mean, it pains me to say it, but you'll see some Brady jerseys.
Sure.
Every Patriots fan I see is going to get a lot of abuse this weekend. I can promise you that. You'll see a ride. You'll see Dan Marino jerseys. There's a lot of Dolphins fans from back in the 90s. You'll see. I'm trying to think. You'll see, of course, Patrick Mahomes jerseys. Anyone that's sort of been good for a while at a top level, you'll see.
Is Dallas a thing over there?
Yeah, Dallas. So the major teams that you'll typically see, like if it wasn't like a game day, but you happen to spot fans in London, you'd see Dallas, you'd see the 49ers, Miami, Patriots, Bears. You get a lot of Bears fans who were back in the 80s, last time the Bears were good. Those are the sort of the highly followed teams. But what I would say is that they're not as hardcore as Bills fans, right? These are people that are, nothing compares to Bills fans. I'll just say that.
It's interesting. You told me, how you became a Bills fan, and I think that would be kind of an appropriate story to share with the people who are listening to us now. And it kind of ties into what you said about the Dolphins, the 49ers, the Cowboys all being good in the 90s, and how those were the formative years of people our age, and maybe why your choices were limited and why those teams are so popular still.
Yeah, so it's a good point. So especially back in the 90s, the NFL was shown free to air on TV. So there was no satellite or cable TV back then. It was just, we had 4 TV channels. And on a Sunday night, your choices were pretty limited. So you have, I don't know, maybe a religious program, you'd have a quiz show, you'd have maybe
Benny Hill.
Battlestar Galactica. No, Benny Hill, not not on a Sunday.
not a Sunday, see?
Right,
It's
yeah,
appropriate for
that'd be on Saturday night.
You said it, not me.
Right next to Monty Python, right? So,
Oh, yeah, there you go.
yeah. And
Wait,
so
that was a show, right? Like in all the movies, but that was actually a show.
Yeah,
show
did a
too?
show. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So then, so on a Sunday night, any guys my age, we were typically in the other room watching the NFL. And so people may not have teams, not be 13, 14, but just like watching the event. And we'd have one game a week. But often they'd show the East Coast teams because the time zones, right? So they would kick off at 6 p.m. on a Sunday. So anyone who was good in the 90s on the Eastern time zones were typically getting a higher profile. So think Dolphins, think Washington as well back in the day. And then, of course, there were the really good teams that would get shown because they were really good. So think 49ers, think Cowboys, back in the day. I remember quite a lot of people were Lions fans as well.
Barry Sanders.
Yeah, exactly. Barry Sanders was kind of a high profile guy. But these were the teams that were followed. Now for me, none of those teams really floated my boat. And I was drawn by these. I was drawn by the Kagan offense. I thought it was the most exciting offense in the NFL, right? Back then, So everything was quick. It was high powered. Jim Kelly had a hell of an arm with obviously Thurman Thomas, Andre Reed, and then you had these snow games, right? So you'd be 6 p.m. and this was unique in terms of what we were watching. These crazy fans, really fast offense and snow games. And that's what drew me in. And then you add to the fact that the Bills were always the underdog, seemingly the underdog, especially when we got to the Super Bowl. So that's what pulled me into the fan base. And so now you've got like these sort of two tiers of fans. You've got people who are fans back in the 80s and 90s. And then you've got fans who probably have found the sport since they started in a lot of these London games, who are, relatively new to the sport, but committed nonetheless.
Your level of sophistication is obvious. First of all, that makes so much sense about the time zone, teams that would be on. As great as San Francisco was, if they were playing 3 hours later, it's 3 a.m. It's not even a thought. But thankfully, the Bills were great when you were, watching at that point. But let me take you to recent times. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the program, you attended the game in Washington and then here. And obviously you watched on TV, but give us your take on, this team, what you like, what you're concerned about. I mean, obviously we're on a high right now, not to suggest that it's temporary. I'm pretty bullish on this team myself, but what do you like? What's your take on this team right now?
So I think that the big things going into this season were how do we compensate for Tremaine Edmonds?
Mm-hmm.
Have we got a balanced run game, which is going to take a little bit of the load off Josh Allen? Have we got a wide receiver too? What exactly are we doing at cornerback? And I think so far this season, all of those questions have been answered really well. And then add to that, you've got probably the two strongest lines that McDermott's had. Certainly the best offensive line. And it's a defensive line putting more pressures on quarterbacks than anyone else in the league right now. So you add all that stuff together, and I think there's something else that maybe people are not talking about is that this team seems calm. Since that Jets game, there's basically been the calmness. Josh walked out. I watched like 2 drives against Washington. Josh is calm. He's chill, and he's making good decisions. And we know Josh, right? Maybe that changes at a certain point. We know Josh. He has that other thing in him, but this seems to be a calm, humble team that's taking it all in its stride. It didn't go into the start of the season being the favorites, and I think that's helped a lot. And now they're out to prove everybody that they can play with the big boys. So I'm really high on this team. I really am. I think it has everything you would want. I'm really impressed by the run game and how it's much way more balanced. Josh is still getting his yards, but they're running it down people's throats. They're drawing in the linebackers and the safeties, and then he's popping it over the top. And it's a simple thing with Josh's arm. That's going to kill teams. And this defense, I'm loving watching this defense. Matt Milano and Terrell Bernard flying around. I'll be honest with you, I was not high on that Terrell Bernard pick at all. I just didn't see it. I just didn't see what they were doing. But now, wow, it looks like a masterstroke by Brandon Beane.
Yeah, no, it really does. I think for me, going back to the offensive line, my aha moment maybe was leading into the Washington game. All I heard on the radio was about their D line, which all 4 guys were first round picks. They were all playing like first round picks. And I thought, coming off the Jets game where the line didn't look that great. maybe I'm not being fair. Maybe Josh, obviously was part of that. But I mean, they barely breathed on Josh Allen.
Yeah.
That great defensive line. And when you talk about Josh Allen being calm, our Josh here has been on the sideline, as part of the coaching staff and seeing firsthand. I've been around it, but Josh was like right in the heart of it. So you would be able to kind of look at a player's eyes and know how he's feeling.
It's funny. A couple of people that I'll watch games with, and I know kind of the talk sometimes is that he'll sit by himself, on the sideline, and that bothers people for some reason. And I just keep trying to make the point. He's got so much in his head. There's so much noise, not the noise in the crowd, but the noise in his head, that there are times when he's better off just sitting by himself with his own thoughts. Now, there, like you mentioned earlier, Charlie, there are times during like the Houston playoff game where he'll get into his own head, that Jets game the first week, and maybe you'd like somebody to be there as a little bit of a support or, hey, let's talk this out. But I like the fact that he sits by himself and that he's just collecting his thoughts because he's done all the film prep. I mean, you do all that stuff ahead of time. What you're seeing in the game really, for the most part, is not anything that you're not already expecting or that you haven't seen before. So it's just clearing your head, taking your time, piecing it all together. He's talking to Ken Dorsey up in the box. Like, he has plenty of people to talk to, but you got to have that 5 minutes between every drive where you just sit down and calm down. The other thing I wanted to mention off what you said, Aaron Schatz, who does Football Outsiders, who was the founder of footballoutsiders.com and developed DVOA, which is like an analytical metric to basically, rank teams, said this is the best 3-1 DVOA team in NFL history.
Wow.
So, and that makes sense in a way. They lost a game by one score and they've won all the others by 28 points or more. So, in one sense, you can sit there and say, wow, what a dominant team. On the other hand, man, that Jets game gets even more frustrating as you go week to week to week because they're gonna make the playoffs in all likelihood. But it's like, man, if it gets down to one game at the end of the year and it's them and KC for the bye again,
even if they laid the egg against the Jets and Josh hopefully got it all out of his system, but it happened. And somehow you go into overtime, and instead of the punt return, it's you get the field goal,
you pull it out like the Chiefs did last week.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's just so. It's just amazing to me that they are statistically the best 3-1 team in NFL history. That's wild. Got another.
It's incredible. Can I just ask a question to you, Josh?
Yeah, sure.
I just thought that just in terms of Josh's calmness and given your experience, I wondered if you can comment on this. Josh last year wasn't confident in that offensive line, and you could tell, he was bailing out of the pocket a lot. And it felt in that first game against the Jets in that second half, there was some kind of, ripple effect. Like he still wasn't trusting the line, even though he could. I don't know about you, but I feel like his navigation of the pocket is so much better in these last 3 games. It looks like he has a bit more trust and he's making good decisions in the pocket. I don't know if you picked up on that as well, but it seems like a thing for me.
2 things. First of all, if you watch his feet in the pocket, he's just so much more calm. He probably takes 2 to 3 steps less in the pocket per drop back. The other thing is they've introduced, and Eric Turner, founder of Cover One, does a great job breaking these down. They've introduced a lot more play action. If you notice, when he's under center, he is much more calm as a decision maker and his footwork than when he's in the shotgun. So it's something to look at this week. Their play action, like, win rate is incredible. I think it's like his completion percentage on play action passes is like 75-80%, and they win almost every play where they're under center and they run play action. Now, of course, a lot of that is dictated by the fact that they can actually run the ball this year with James Cook and Latavius Murray. The upgrade from Devin Singletary to the James Cook, Latavius Murray, Damian Harris is
significant,
amazing. And then from that leads to the play action. And I love when he's under center. Like, I just think he's calmer. He's got to go through his progressions. He turns his back to the defense, turns back around. The field's opened up. The linebackers are flowing towards the line of scrimmage. And man, you're right. He seems like a different quarterback because he is calm. And I think there's a trust in the structure of the offense. And like I said, I think the introduction of being under center more and play action more with the 2 tight ends, it's not just, 4 wide and you got to trust Dion and Spencer Brown to hold up on every play. I got to tell you, I don't think I'd be calm either if it's 4 wide and you've got no chip, you've got no back in the backfield. Like, it was too wide open. And now, bringing in Dalton Kincaid, more 2 tight end sets, it just feels like it makes a lot more sense to me. You don't need him to spread everything out. He's going to do that on his own. He'll make those plays on his own. I got another question for you here from 916. This is actually an interesting one that I'm curious about too. We see fans in Europe setting fire inside of stadiums at soccer games. What are they burning, and how is that safe?
Well, I'll tell you for a fact that doesn't happen so much in England. But yeah, maybe in some parts of Europe, they're pretty tight on that stuff in the UK. I mean, we had this history of fan violence back in the 80s, right? So what they did is they made it all cedar, and they put cameras everywhere, and if you were causing trouble, you were out of there. So that I've not seen that myself, but yeah, it's a good question. I have no idea.
You'll see that in like some of the stadiums in
Italy as
like
well, especially.
Eastern Europe, and
Yeah.
and they're definitely they're burning something, and it's like a big, almost like a bonfire. It looks like inside the stadium.
I have no clue. But in some of those stadiums, that the fans actually have control over a section of the stadium, right? These sort of ultras, I know, like you say, in Eastern Europe and in Italy especially, whereas really the club doesn't control it, right? That those fans control it. There's no police going in there, and they do what the hell they want. I mean, it's wild.
Wow. So the atmosphere on Sunday, what do you expect? Like, what is the crowd like, for the game? Is there chanting? Is there singing? Do you expect any of that? Or is it more like, what you saw in DC and obviously here for the game on Sunday?
Yeah, I think it'll be more what we saw in DC, I suspect. I mean, your average UK fan is pretty knowledgeable, but there to watch the sport. And it's not for them. It's not just there to go and get drunk. And this is a rarity for us to have games, so people really go and attend and watch the sport. So you won't hear like sort of soccer style chanting typically. Although I know that the UK Giants fans came up with a creative way to tell the Packers where to put their cheese last year. But you'll certainly hear the shout song for sure. I think there's a lot of Bills fans coming over. It's going to be it's not going to be the atmosphere that we had on Sunday. Let's be clear. You can have every jersey represented. I'm just hoping that we've got enough Bills fans there to make it feel like a home game. I mean, I was at that Washington game, and I'm walking through the tailgates going, there's a lot of Bills Mafia here. There's a lot of Bills Mafia here. And I just thought, well, yeah, maybe it looks less when you get in the stadium, but it wasn't. I would be surprised if it was less than half of the stadium.
Yeah.
So if we could get like the 10, 20,000 Bills fans in Spurs, they'll make themselves heard. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, they mentioned that on the telecast, the television with the Washington game. They a few times like, wow, there are a lot of Bills fans there. So I was at the game in 2015, and I don't think there were 10, 15,000 Bills fans, but I believe there will be, this time. And I think going into this game, the other demon they'll have to exercise is the Jags, for some reason, have had our number over the years, and particularly the game a couple years ago with their Josh Allen and having a game kind of like Bernard had against Washington. But
and how
he was all over the field.
How annoying
I know, right?
Was that? Oh, Josh Allen, that's Josh Allen. We get it. His name's Josh Allen too.
Yeah, so we didn't have that neutralized for this game. Right?
I can't believe that our Josh Allen has not logged that. And he's thinking revenge.
Exactly.
I think he's that kind of dude.
Yeah. So let's say it's 3rd and 15, and he takes off. He sees some green, and he's running, not quite at the sideline. And it's him and the other Josh Allen. Does he lower his shoulder, try to jump over him, or? Well, I guess you'll see. You'll be there.
We'll see. But the place will be going wild if Josh Allen starts using his legs. I tell you. I mean, there'll be a lot of people that maybe aren't Bills fans, but are there to see Josh Allen. I mean, he's one of the biggest stars in the game, right? Face of Madden, and there'll be a lot of people that they just love watching Josh Allen. I mean, I live in a small village. And I was stood outside the butcher's buying some chicken or something, and there's a guy in a Jets cap. So I thought, well, I have to talk to him, and even he was just like, "Your quarterback's incredible. I love watching Josh Allen. I mean, like,
he's fun to watch. He might be the most fun player.
Right.
Him and Patrick Mahomes are probably the two most fun players in the league to watch. Not only are they great, but they're fun. Speaking of fun, can you kind of tell people and fill us with envy as to what the rest of the weekend looks like for you? What is tomorrow? The pub crawl you guys are doing. Make me wish that I was there, please.
All right. So first things first, there's I think 4 or 5 different pubs around London that are dedicated to Bills fans. Obviously, the Fitzrovia Bell, our home pub. There's a couple close by. If you want to find out what those pubs are, just look at the London Bills backers Twitter feed, social media, and you'll find a full list of the Bills pubs. There's a whole range of events. So we got the Shout podcast hosted at Fitzrovia Bell tomorrow evenings with Matt Perino, and tomorrow we also have some walking tours. So from Bills fans that have come over, we got some locals showing people around the city a little bit. Saturday, we have a pub crawl hosted by me, touring 50 Bills Mafia around London. What could possibly go wrong with that? So if you see people, thrown up in the Thames or whatever, then you'll know.
What time
You'll
does
know
that
why.
event start?
That
Noon?
starts at 1.
Okay.
And
When
it
does
is
it
sold
end?
out. So please do not try and come and add.
crash
I've got
it, yeah.
agreement with every single pub that I can bring 50 Bills Mafia in there. And
That's gonna be wow. Is there gonna be any video content of that? I'd love to watch some of that on YouTube. You should live stream it.
Yeah, right. There's a couple of journalists expressed an interest in maybe coming along, so we'll see how that works. If you see us on Channel 7, you'll know why. So yeah, then we got a Bills squad, then we got a big party on Saturday night. We've got DJ Joey Horn. If anyone's been to fans of Buffalo tailgate, you'll recognize him. He's coming and DJing for us, and we've got the Bills Mafia babes. Kristen Kimmick will be there helping host as well. So that's Saturday, and there's also our sort of sister affiliation, UK Bills. They've got bus rides going around the city. They've got a boat trip going on. Also hosting a tailgate. Fans of Buffalo got a tailgate right next to the stadium, actually, in a brewery, literally right next to the stadium, 3 minutes away on Sunday morning. And on Sunday, again, the pub will be dedicated to the Bills, so there'll be people going there really before the game, heading up to the game together. I've got some seats where I can get in early and check out some food, and I think that's what I'll do. See the players warming up and everything like that, and then it'll all be back to the pub after the game as well to watch Red Zone and see if some of our AFC East rivals can mess the bed.
Oh, that's true. You'll still have the full day, as well as we will. How will most people get to the game on Sunday? Do they walk? Do they take the tube?
Yeah, so if anyone's been to London, knows we already got this extensive underground train system called the Tube. So it's actually pretty easy to get to the Spurs Stadium. So London's a really big city. Getting around the Tube's pretty easy. So actually, there's a line that runs pretty close to the pub, which takes you within 20 minutes walk of the stadium, and getting off at Seven Sisters Stadium, or you can go over to Liverpool Street Station, which is one of the major rail stations, and then there's an overground. It's 10 minutes or so to the stadium, and that drops you right outside. So personally, I'll be doing that. I'll go and get some breakfast near Liverpool Street Station, which is sort of the business district, I suppose, or one of the business districts in London. Meeting up with the guys that I got tickets with, and then we'll grab some breakfast, grab some beers, and help to the stadium nice and early.
Breakfast and beer. It's a strange combination, but the situation calls for it. But
I feel like you're warming up to the idea, Don.
Yeah.
Well, our neighbors are all doing it. They're talking about bringing breakfast pizza and drink Bloody Marys.
And Don's in charge of the coffee.
Well, I'm not going to be there. I'm going to be in the Adirondacks. I'm just talking about the article I wrote was about the coffee. Now I regret it. It's coming out here shortly on WBEN. But I was just thinking about if you have any folks that are behaving badly, hopefully not, or if they're in the bar and you said they're not a Bills fan. And I was just thinking of the Top Gun Maverick movie where he goes in the bar and he gets thrown. I forget what he did to get thrown out, but like they all grabbed him and
he didn't pay the check.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yep. He didn't pay the check, so they grabbed him, dumped him over the side, and so yeah, whatever. Video that if it happens.
Yeah, I think what a great time that it's going to be, and what a great for anybody coming over there. Like you guys have done an incredible job, putting it together, marketing it, making it seem like something that you would want to do. And so I really commend you, even before you've done it, and I'm sure it'll all go off really well. But you guys have really done a great job in making it seem like a destination and something where I know I wanted to go. Like I was really on the fence. We talked about this Sunday. I was on the fence as to whether to go, and I almost came by myself just because I felt like there's like a community, and meeting you, and I really commend you guys for what you've done to make people from Western New York want to go, and then B, I'm sure have just a wonderful time.
I really appreciate that, and thanks very much for saying it. I think that, just speak from my own experience, I never met another Bills fan until about 6-7 years ago, and I've been a Bills fan, since I was a teenager. Because although we're hardcore and we're committed, we didn't have an organization, right? We didn't have a community, and it was the Texans game where I first met. Actually, I ran into a guy called Andy, who's Bill's heir on Twitter. He's got an Irish buffalo flag, which is kind of cool. But other than him, I hadn't really met a Bills fan in the last 6-7 years. And then we had a Texans game, that playoff game, which we all remember brutally. And we brought together about 50. We just put it on Twitter. Does anybody want to come and hang out? And there's about 50 fans. And suddenly it was like, you know what? We could probably get a bar together. And we started doing that, and as more and more people got to hear about it, what we found is that there's a lot of Bills fans in the area. There's a lot of Western New Yorkers. There's a lot of people passing through due to work or vacations who wanted to go and watch the Bills game somewhere. So we created this destination, and you know what? It's just been an incredible experience just to meet people from all over the world. We've had people from Scandinavia, from Australia, you name it, come to the pub and watch games with us and said that this was the first time they'd ever been able to watch a game with other Bills fans and people who'd never been to Buffalo. So that's been incredible. And because we've been able to create that community and that organization, now we're in a position to actually really put on events for welcome people. And Don, you mentioned it's going to be different than 2015. I think that's really true. I see way more people coming over, way more people seeing this as a destination and knowing that there's going to be Bills fans on this side of the Atlantic ready to welcome them.
Yeah, it's. I'm glad you met your first Bills fan. That could have gone south. We've all been to games. First impressions are important. I'm glad you met. There's some that you could. Oh my gosh,
Don and I have met our share of fans that maybe would have turned you into a Dolphins fan.
Yeah, they're minority.
Jets fan.
A minority of the fans,
Yes.
but oh man, they would not.
Yes,
you might have rethought that real quick.
We have run into our fair share of interesting folks who are Bills fans over the years, both in the stadium, outside the stadium, and all the rest. Wow, yeah, it's commendable. It's really commendable though and it's always nice when it had to be relief for you when you start meeting fans of the same team as yours, and they're good guys. It's like when I started working for the team and I looked up and I idolized Thurman Thomas and Andre Reed and Bruce Smith, and then I met them, and they're nice, and it was a relief that not all of them were nice. Most of them were nice, but it's a relief when the team you cheer for or the guys you look up to as a kid are like good people,
right?
So that must and obviously Bills fans are legendary for friendliness and partying and all the rest. So man, you really picked the right team,
right? But you're right. I mean, it just does feel different. I mean, most people here have a soccer team, and we're used to having those types of fans that you go, oh, yeah, I don't want to hang out with those guys. But every team has that element, right? But I've introduced several people who were kind of looking for a team and weren't sure to choose. I was like, I'm obviously unbiased, but come along to the pub, come and meet some Bills fans, and without a shadow of a doubt, people going, I can't believe how welcoming everybody is. I can't believe how nice they are. I can't believe that even though that they just said that they didn't feel like they knew about the sport that well, just how inclusive they were and how happy they were to share their knowledge and get them involved. And because of that, they're now part of this community. And I think it's just an incredible thing. And it's not always the case. You got people who want to gatekeep fandom, right? And they say, oh no, you have to be this, you have to be that to be a fan of this team. But that's not how Bills fans are. It's certainly not my experience. And the more people I meet, the more friends I make. And if I go on a road trip and walk into a bar, I usually walk out with 3 or 4 phone numbers or Instagram accounts or everything, people that I've met who are Bills fans, and just want to talk Bills.
Don't promise them tickets or give out a business card.
Right.
Oh, yeah. The business card. Boy, I hid those business cards. I know you did too. God, that's the worst
inside story, by the way.
The worst thing that you could do is tell somebody you worked for the team, because then it was just relentless. And thankfully, there was no social media then, at least in my case. But
was it Carolina? A friend of ours, a guy that we work with, and we were having a good time, and there were a lot of Bills fans in Charlotte, and he just was giving his business card out like nothing and say, oh, anything you need. And guess what? They took him up on it. His phone was ringing the next week.
The receipts started coming the next week where guys hey, remember me? My new friend. That's funny. There's that balance there. Anything else that you want to leave people with?
Well, let me ask you this too. I'm going to be on locally here, WBN, tomorrow morning at 8:20 Eastern. So you've talked a lot about your messages to fans that are going to be in London, but what message would you leave for those here in the States, most of which obviously are going to be here watching it in TV, about something maybe you haven't said already, which you said a lot. I think Eric Turner might want to hire him too after hearing his
there you go.
His assessment of the team.
Look, I think that I know for some Bills fans, this isn't great news, right? They can't afford to travel over the ocean to come watch the game, and they would rather be sat in Orchard Park and watching them. And for some people, they can't make the trip, and that's obviously disappointing. And I understand that as a sports fan. I want to be able to see my team as often as I possibly can. So I get the fact that not everybody's going to be super keen on the sport expanding out or in this way. But just know that there are there is a really committed hardcore fan base here that is incredibly excited to see this team, and maybe have never seen them before. And yeah, they're going to be well looked after. Let's put it that way. And as are the fans. London's a great city with many, many things to do. And I think that it's just great seeing so many people embracing the chance to travel, see something different, and see football in a different city. So yeah, that's what I leave people with.
I love that. Essentially, you're saying, hey, you're sending your team over here. You're giving up a home game, but don't worry, we'll take care of them. You'll
Friends
do
are here.
everything possible. Yeah. Friends are here to make it seem like as close to a home game as it could be, even though it's across the pond. That's fantastic.
That is really well said. I'll echo what Don said. There are people here that are a little bitter that you're giving up an October home game, and there's limited games, et cetera. But the idea that people like you and people who haven't seen the team yet live get to see them once, maybe people around here don't take it quite for granted how many times you get to see this team and how good they are, and just the idea that you can expand the fan base and expand people's experiences. And so for some people in England, I'm sure it's going to be a once in a lifetime experience to see the Bills live.
I've given one of my tickets to a guy who said this was from his perspective, this was a once in a lifetime experience to be able to come and see this team. He'd never been to an NFL game before, and he absolutely can't wait. I've told him I'm bringing him a jersey. He said, "Hey, I'd wear a mankini to come to this game." So,
that's strong.
I'm like, I'll bring you a jersey. Don't worry.
Yes, please.
Take his word for it. Yeah.
One more comment here from someone who's watching us live. Morning Mayan Linda West. This man, I almost started bursting out laughing. Don might not get this because he didn't watch the show. But can you ask Charlie to make up a Josh Allen song like they did for Jamie Tart?
Oh wait, I watched Ted Lasso.
Oh, you watched Ted Lasso?
Yeah.
Yes.
There's another one though I didn't watch.
Welcome
yet.
to Wrexham.
Okay, remind me of that.
Yes,
I watched Ted Lasso. I loved it.
Clue. As you remember from my last appearance, I cannot sing. I have no idea.
All right.
I'll come up with something for you guys. Don't worry.
That's actually just it's really funny. Jamie Tart was kind of the best player on the.
He was the cocky guy,
yes.
But he transformed.
AFC Richmond. He got better as the years went by.
Yeah.
So check out Don tomorrow on WBEN at 8:20 a.m.
Yeah.
That's 9:30 on the radio here. Yeah, no, that's really exciting. And Charlie, good luck with everything this weekend. Fingers crossed that everything goes off without a hitch. Clearly, the Bills need the Bills to win. Would enjoy a good game, but wouldn't mind a blowout either.
Yep, I'll take it in which way. Win's a win, and I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on. And I can't wait.
Of course, and we'll check in with you later on in the season.
Yep,
sounds good.
All right, stay upright and stay sober,
Sir Charlie.
Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.